proud, and shout out to Hutch and Above the Law, because you know, they are, in my opinion, one of rap's most important groups and best on top of that, but they also really sonically shifted how what we know as gangster rap and what became known as gangster rap, the sound of gangster rap changed because of Above the Law, in my opinion.
It did. You know, it became funkier.
So, Above the Law, you know, is extremely important, but I wanted you to break down, not saying who's better or anything, but just the difference of how Hutch approached producing for Living Like Hustlers or Vocally Pimpin' versus what Dre was doing, the stuff he was doing at the time.
Yeah, Hutch was more into the funk, you know, because his family was, I think Willie Hutch was his uncle.
Yeah, he's born into it, literally.
I mean, if you listen to that old Motown funk that he was doing from the soundtracks, Willie Hutch was, you know, rest in peace, but definitely one of the funksters.
Right.
So he had a different ear, you know. And it's, you know, I don't want to compare him, but he was driven more towards that funk, what you call G-funk sound, Parliament, and you know, and Zap, and before everybody, you know, kind of jumped on board on that. But that was his angle of sounding different, because you know, nobody wants to have the same sound. And back then, it was unwritten law that you can't bite nobody. You know what I'm saying? You can't sound like nobody else because you get dissed.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because yes, of course that's true, but I always thought it was interesting that with, you know, EPMD, with X-Clan, with even MC Breed, and then you have, of course, when you look at Eazy-E and NWA, they used the same type of samples with Parliament Funkadelic, but they used them in a different, the more energetic side of it, with Funky Worm and the different things to make it more aggressive or angry or whatever, whereas Hutch's was much more in the groove of it.
Right, and you know, you could use the same samples because nobody owned them, but the person that wrote them. But the style and that you put on top of how you use it, which makes it like, okay, you used it like that, and you use it like that. So that would be the difference, you know. And but definitely not rapping like somebody. Like nowadays, everybody sounds alike, you know. It's a difference. So you can't distinguish nobody nowadays. Some of them you can, but you know, for the most part, everybody follows the leader. Back in the day, you couldn't do that. You couldn't rap like, you know, somebody from East Coast or the West Coast. Anybody, you had to have your own rap style.
Right.
And that was a big no-no to rap like somebody else.
Okay. And then who and why did you gravitate to most in the Ruthless camp, would you say?
I was with Dre pretty much every day and all night.
Okay.
And pretty much Dre, because I mean, me working in the studio with him was pretty much there. I'd be there just watching him do beats.
Okay.
You know, I was smoking weed back then, and he wasn't, so I didn't have nothing else to do. So I just watch him make beats and just how he put stuff together. You know, it was real interesting.
So where does your musicianship come from?
It was just, it came from God. That was the creator. I mean, my mother didn't play music. My dad didn't play music. I had, you know, family members that played, but for the most part, my immediate parents, they didn't play or sing. So I was just kind of drawn towards the guitar. You know, I used to play the broom when I was little. Then they got tired of me, you know,
right,
breaking straw all over the house. So I had an uncle buy me a guitar. So it started from there. And that was just an inspiration that I always wanted to play guitar. I used to, my mom used to have parties at her house back in the day when they had 45s, little vinyl records. They used to have a record player. And I used to play them back in the day. But it was just the feeling of music and the guitar that I gravitated towards.
Okay. And then as rap evolved, once we get toward the 90s and we're getting more away from music as being played per se because of sampling and all these other things, and then we have all the sampling lawsuits, did you notice people reaching out to you more or less? Because I remember just as a fan and as a consumer at the time, the music sonically, because of what was going on with sampling, was changing like very quickly, whereas people had different sounds and styles, of course, but you know, the sound and how it was being created had to change because of the legality of music. So how did that affect you in the early 90s?
I got a lot of calls.
Oh.
Because of people who had like 10 samples in their song, or 5, whatever, how many samples they used, they had to cut back on the sampling. So that made my phone ring a lot, you know. So I mean, I got calls from everybody from DJ Quick to Tupac, and you know, Coolio, and you know, just all the various people on the West Coast who were doing music.
Well, you mentioned Coolio, another Comptonite, but the thing I always think is interesting is how his career progressed, because with being in D.O.C and the Mad Circle on the Ain't a Damn Thing Changed album, and then once he got with Tommy Boy, became a solo artist and had like the County Line, and then you played on Sticky Fingers. It was just shocking to me how his career evolved, because he's not, if you listen to Ain't a Damn Thing Changed and listen to County Line and Sticky Fingers, that's not at all what ended up being how he's known for. Right. So for you, break it down, like working on Sticky Fingers in particular with Coolio, what was that vibe and atmosphere like compared to probably the perception of who Coolio is? Right.
I think, you know, back then people were rappers wanted to still fit in, you know, because they still had the gangster vibe type of feel to it and sound. But at the end of the day, people want to evolve past that. Right. And I think that's what, you know, he aspired to do. But to, you know, to blend in, you want to have a sound that's not too far from what's going on right now. But that's, I mean, it's pretty interesting. He made a great career out of, you know, finding your identity is what most people strive to do, and I think he found his just by experimenting and rapping about other stuff, and you know, people definitely thought it was good.
Yeah, because on It Takes a Thief, the album that those songs are on, Sticky Fingers and County Line, and then of course Fantastic Voyage, I remember reading how initially the lyrics were different and much harder, and that the label actually told him like, hey, if you just, this song sounds so good, if you just kind of make it more about celebratory and partying, and you know, he dibbled and dabbled in the ain't no blood, ain't no cribbing, ain't no, you know, that ain't no set tripping in there, but the song, just imagine if that hadn't happened, like his career,
might not have,
he might not even put out an album.
And that's an interesting point, because it also depends on what label you're with too. Right. Had he been on Ruthless, then he could have got away with doing, you know, more grimy stuff. But other labels didn't really, you know, some labels didn't want that. They wanted to sell more, you know, more records and have a mass appeal. Right. You know what I mean? So they would suggest to the artist that, you know, we don't want to do this or try this, and it's up to the artist to be creative enough to, you know, make that happen.
And speaking of other artists that had interesting career paths, one that had an unfortunate career path was MC Trouble, that you also worked with. Yes. That you know, she was a female rapper that had a lot of promise and a lot going on, and you played on her records, and she passed away, unfortunately. Right before her record, when we kind of blew up. Yeah, she was a daughter of a guy I know who played keyboards in one of the funk groups, Lakeside, and I met her, and he's like, man, my daughter, she raps, and you know, she'll need some music. We just got her signed to Motown. Right. So I produced like 4 songs on there and played on, you know, a lot of songs on there. But yeah, rest in peace, Trouble. I was looking forward to that, you know, her enjoying the success and like everybody else, you know. And I think too, it's important because in the early 90s, of course, especially out here in Los Angeles, gangster rap was so prominent and dominant. And then Trouble was very different than that. She was nothing like Yo-Yo. Right. She was nothing like Sugar T, who came out a little bit later. She was very, very more, well, you break it down because you knew her, but like, what was she like as a person, and what you saw of her musically? She was a fun-loving person, and it came out through her music, and that's why she rapped about stuff she wanted to have fun doing, you know? So she just wanted to have fun and enjoy doing, you know, again, nobody wanted to be like anybody else, but still wanted to be competitive. Right. You know, I think she would have had a great success
had she, lived to, promote the album and stuff like that. But.
And speaking of labels, being on Motown, that was at a time when they had few to no rappers, which was interesting on many levels.
Yeah, and that's my point again. Depending on what label you're on, they don't want no gangster rap. They don't, you see what I'm saying? Motown was not a gangster rap label.
At all.
So you had to be kind of, purebred to be on there, and you still had to give your own edge to it. So I think that helped shape her album too, because I don't think they would have accepted anything other than what she gave them.
Right.
Because they were looking for somebody that's not as dirty or as grimy as some other rappers.
Right. And then musically for yourself, at this time getting into the early 90s, for you as a player, was there any stigma per se of getting in the game really on a major level with all these Ruthless records, and other than Michelle and JJ Fad, like super hardcore stuff and doing stuff with Quick and others? Did people care about that to reach out to you outside of that world, or was it really focusing, like the labels or the A&Rs or the other producers or whoever, did they like just love the fact that you were great, or did they worry that, oh, is he going to be a problem because he's working with gangster rap? Like, how did that happen?
Actually, it was welcomed,
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, people look at the success. So,
the result.
Yeah, the result, you know what I mean? And the success, like, okay, you helped them be successful. I need some of that over here too. Okay. And the different producers would have their ideas on, what direction they would want to go, but still work with somebody that worked on a lot of hit records. And I think that's what really they was looking for. They wanted some hit records.
It's a bottom line business.
Hey, I mean, you can put out 100 albums, but if you don't have one hit,
you're not going to put out 101.
Right. You drop from a label, because at the end of the day, they want, you at least got to give them one hit record.
Right.
So you can record as many records you want and put them out and get all the features you want, but if you don't have a hit record, that's the bottom line of everything. So that's what people wanted, to be a part of a hit. Okay. And fortunately, I was a part of a lot of hits.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
It would be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Your MTV back with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always going to be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.